is this what messages do I want to send? What messages do they seem like they're receiving? And how can I check in with those messages to make sure that the messages that I'm sending are the ones that I want to send, and vice versa. So for me, a measure of success for communication in a negotiation is that an agreement would be based on clear, efficient, and effective communication. We can talk a little bit more later about what to do when they get silent, because that often feels like a lack of communication. 6, relationship. Again, really critical here. It's the interpersonal dynamic between parties that's primarily based on trust and respect. And I think you all know this as well as I do. It's not that we have to like every single person that we negotiate with, though. You don't have to like every single stakeholder. You know, they don't all have to be friends. However, the relationship here talks about the trust that's required when you're in a relation, like when you're in a stakeholder relationship with someone. Is there enough trust there to feel comfortable letting them know what your interests are and asking them questions to get out their interests? Is there enough trust that even when you come to like a first option, like our first solution, is there enough trust that you can brainstorm beyond that, coming up with other options that might be better for one or both of you? And so a measure of success in terms of relationship is, does this agreement, does this interaction improve or at least not damage the relationship that I have with this particular stakeholder? 7 is the commitment itself. This is the oral or written statements about what a party will do or not do. Sometimes people think about commitments as if they're, you know, just the kind of the written agreement, you know, at the end of a negotiation. But throughout the conversation, there are commitments, right? Commitments on processes, commitments on who's gonna be at what meeting and where that meeting is gonna be. And so really important for me here is that the commitments that we're agreeing to are ones that are clear and realistic. There's a lot of times where we'll get really, really excited and we'll promise to do something, right? We'll promise to be on a call, or we'll promise to be somewhere, or we'll promise to tell someone. And the reality is our relationship with that person or our resources are finite, time is finite, and we just don't have, it's just not a realistic commitment. So we want to be sure that our commitments are clear, realistic. And then one last thing is that your commitments should be better, of course, than your BATNA, kind of bringing us back up to that very first element that I talked about. So in summary, thinking about success in a negotiation, an outcome is successful if it's better than your BATNA. BATNA, I didn't actually explain this earlier. I apologize. That's your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Many of you, you may have heard this in your studies, but just quickly for those who don't or haven't, if you have a list of alternatives, again, alternatives being the things that you can do away from the table, the BATNA is the best of those alternatives. The stronger your alternatives are away from the table, the stronger your BATNA, the better positioned you are to negotiate. And that's not just because you won't agree to something that's not better, but I also find that it has a centering effect. People feel, especially in things like salary negotiations, people walk in more centered. They often will not agree to something that isn't actually in their best interest. They'll take the time that they need to explore lots of options if they've spent some time thinking about what their best alternative is. Second, it meets parties' interests rather than positions. It represents the best of many options considered. It's based on objective standards of legitimacy. It results from clear and effective communication. It improves or does not damage the relationship, and it includes a commitment that's clear and realistic. So for the majority of, in a couple seconds here, I'll stop talking. I'll give you an opportunity to ask questions about the 7 elements. I probably will only offer like one question or two, because I want to spend the rest of today actually jumping into that number 2, understanding the party's interests, which I tend to think is kind of one of those core pieces of this framework that can really help us, especially in situations where things get sticky with stakeholders. So with that, I'll pause for a second. I'll take a question or two if there are any, but otherwise I want to jump into getting more into interests.
Great, thanks, Elise. Does anyone have a burning question around this right now? All right, I think we're good to move on. We'll have some time for Q&A as well at the end, hopefully. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to break you up into pairs. Elise, do you want to frame this, or would you like me to carry on?
Go for it. Yeah.
Go for it. Okay. So we're going to, in Zoom, we can like connect you with each other in a little breakout room in a pair. And what we're going to do is, you know, if you think about the scenario that we heard from Sandra and Jairo about, you know, challenging stakeholders who don't participate, or they start to like talk to other stakeholders on the side and try to get them not to be part of the process, or they're posting stuff on Facebook about why it's not good, that kind of challenge, or they've turned into a bad stakeholder because they don't really want to change anything. And we're going to ask you to take that kind of stakeholder, that scenario, and start to really dig into what really do they desire? Like, what does this person really, what are their real deep cares and concerns behind all of that behavior, right? So you can have a kind of chat with each other about what you think they might be, those cares and concerns. Does that make sense? We're going to give you like 5 minutes to do that. Does anyone have a question before I send you off into your pairs? Okay, great. So give me a moment just to set this up. Okay.
Just to reiterate again, this is not about the positions. It's not about necessarily the things they're demanding, saying that they want. Again, you want to be thinking about, okay, so this is what they say they want. Why might they want it? Because that's the meat. That's what we're looking for.
So obviously the team in Paraguay, you'll be 5 on your call because you've got 4 people in your room on Zoom. And then there'll be 1 3. Okay? So you should be seeing a request to join. Ronald, do you see a request to join your room? And Cesar, do you see a request to join your room? Could you explain it in Spanish, Elise, for Cesar and his team in Paraguay?
Oh,
they've gone. Okay, awesome.
Okay.
All right, let me just set a timer.
Yeah, I have 16:53 on my clock here.
Put a little thing so it actually tells me, beeps at me.
And in terms of time, I think we're doing fine, right?
Yeah.
We're right on track.
I think we're on track, which is awesome.
Good.
Which means I can eat a banana. It's going to pause.
Hello. Welcome back.
Hello.
How did that go? Did it flow pretty easily?
Yeah, I think so. I think, I think you had a lot of ideas. Francesca, was it?
Alexandra.
Alexandra, sorry.
Great. Welcome back, everyone. So we want to hear. So I'm just going to hand over to Elise. Please remember to mute yourself if you're not on mute.
Great. Welcome back, everybody. Lise and I are really excited to hear about some of the interests that you identified in your groups. So I think what I'll do is I'll start by asking each group to give me 2 or 3 from their list. And then once we've captured all of them, if there are some that that aren't up here on the PowerPoint, we'll go back and add them later. So why don't let's see here. Who would like to start?
I'm happy to start, Pascal. I was talking with Gala, and Gala, please add to what we said. But we felt that we identified 2 interests. One is clearly an interest they have to develop a better understanding and knowledge and technical knowledge about the issue we are dealing with, so that they are better equipped to meet other stakeholders. So technical input is an interest they may have to join the platform. That's one thing, and that's what Guy was saying. And the other interest that is massively underestimated in most of our community platform is the interest for them to optimize profit, grow market share, grow market access. And we said that the objective of our multi-stakeholder dialogue is, deforestation-free commodity production. Maybe it should be deforestation-free growing commodity production, or more profitable. So I think we have the economic dimension is missing into the dialogue process. So of course they are not showing up so much at the table. So that's it for me. Gala, please add up.
I don't think we have time to hear from everyone, so it would be great if we could just have one person from each group, please.
Let's see here. Eileen, whose group were you in?
I was with Kathleen, and we discussed. I mean, I think we took a different angle for the question, and we know we were more discussing the barriers for these bad stakeholders to be involved, and we're seeing a key point that there is a lot of competition between these different stakeholders, and so there is this kind of also individual behavior where they are not sure that they want to be involved in a partnership, and they prefer working on the side by themselves to achieve what they are pursuing. So what is really needed is we need this understanding of the added value of the partnership or being involved in a platform. That's the key point.
I want to keep going on that. So let's flip the competition on its head, thinking about like what would they want? Like what are they looking for? So essentially what you're saying is what they want is not being, they don't think it's achievable in this particular platform. So they're going to choose some other route. Get that? So going back deeper, what is it that they want? What are they looking for?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we were saying, that they are not going to be involved directly in this platform, but I mean, we haven't really talked about concrete case of like a particular interest.
That's okay. I mean, we're not talking about anything specific. So, I mean, I didn't give you a case study or anything like that. So if you could just imagine, what might they be looking for?
I mean, yeah, I mean, like, I think at least one of the key challenge for development, I would say the same, it's like you have sustainability, but you also want to have development or like growth. And sometimes you can see it as two different, kind of adversary, objectives that you are trying to achieve. So
yeah, no, so that in my mind, there's two interests there. So the one interest is this idea of growth, which is something that Pascal mentioned earlier as well, right? People are looking to get bigger. They're looking to hire more people, et cetera, have greater access to the market. And then there's the second piece, which I think you're bringing up, is this idea of sustainability, right? And we can talk a little bit more on what we would specifically mean about what's sustainable, but they do tend to feel like contradictory interests sometimes in the conversation. Absolutely.
Yeah, and we said also, you're looking really for the short-term outcomes or like concrete results, and that can be also seen, as contradictory with sustainable, which is you're going to see, the outcome, the result really in the longer time. And
so I think that could be a couple of different things there. One is this idea of having an impact. There are some people who are looking to have an impact, and they're looking to see that impact in like right now. There are other people that are happy to wait, or they're happy to never see their particular impact. It could be a piece of that. I think there's also something here about efficiency, right? Like people have a specific amount of time, and so a lot of times people are driving towards a solution now because they are running out of time. So I'm going to capture that here too. Thank you very much. Let's do, I'm moving through groups here. Kathleen, you were just working with Aline, sorry.
How about Gradia?
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, so what we discussed in our group was mostly the reasons why we feel that our stakeholders are the ones that are bad at behaving the way they are behaving. One of the reasons we talked about was around how we convey our messages to them, as in what is it that we want? Is it clear to them? Is it clear what is their position? What do they need from us? So sometimes we have miscommunications among ourselves, and we do not understand clearly what each other wants from the platform. So this might be an issue. We also discussed the issue of competition. Sometimes there are some underlying nuances and factors that are not also voiced from some of these stakeholders. So on the surface, they accept a lot of things to say yes, but there are some issues that are under and they didn't bring up to the surface. And these little reasons that are undercover are the ones that might be keeping them away. There's some competition. I think someone mentioned competition earlier.
Can you unpack that idea of the other reasons? What other reasons can you just think of? Again, I know that there wasn't a specific scenario.
Yes, like I was saying just now, the other reason around competition with each other. Maybe you are in competition for funding with another organization, and you are also trying to get them at your table as a stakeholder. So yes, that might also be a reason why they seem difficult. They are not participating. So yeah, we discussed that factor also in our group.
Okay, so access to funding is definitely one of their interests.
Yes, that could probably be an issue besides the communication issues.
Right. So I tend to think that people have a set of interests that they are trying to accomplish, right? Each of us have them. Each of us have them for the organizations. And we're going to kind of maneuver ourselves in life based on those interests. And so if we feel like that it's in our best interest to not have a conversation or not be a part of our platform, and we think that we can, we don't think that we can get what we want, or we don't think that we can get anywhere close to what we're looking for, that we will find alternative ways to go about doing things. I often find, however, that sometimes we're not totally clear on what our own interests are. And in conversations when, especially when it seems like we would be in a conflicting relationship with one another, if you really get down to it, a lot of times, if we can look at our different interests, if we can figure out creative and innovative ways to satisfy people's interests while also meeting our own, we're able to, like, the agreements that we're able to come up with, we are able to work with one another in even better ways. And that's why not only understanding our own interests, but understanding what their interests are, not just, oh my gosh, they're so frustrating, right? But like, why? What is it that they want that they don't seem to be getting here at this particular table, in this particular conversation? Like that question in and of itself can change the direction of a relationship. Let's keep moving. Lise, can you help me?
Yeah, try Cesar's group.
Great, thanks.
Cesar, Oscar, and Sandra. Sandra, you want to do? Okay.
Yes. We were working together, the Paraguayan team, with Oscar, Cesar, Almica, and Celeste. So I think that we talk about two different interests, like the interest of the stakeholders that they don't participate or they don't want to participate in the process, and the other that they see an advantage of participating in the process. So in the case of the ones that they don't want to participate, sometimes it's also like, because maybe they see a competition, something that you mentioned before. They see the process, the dialogue is a competition for their own interest. If they...
Why is competition, I'm going to stop you there. We'll keep hearing the same thing. Why would they not want competition? What are they after?
Probably because they want to control and they want to be the one that, they want to lead the process, and maybe they don't want to participate as another stakeholder, and also because their own interests, and they're also something that it was mentioned, Gradia, about funding, but in the way that if they want to have access to funding to promote their own process, then it's, they don't want to participate in others' process, do you know what I mean? It's like, usually it's when they have their own agenda and they want to be the leaders of this kind of process, and they don't see an added value to be just another stakeholder.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you one. I'm gonna push you just a little bit further. Why would they want to be leaders of the process? What's in it for them?
Probably because they can control the outcomes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what outcome are they looking for?
Well, it depends on, in our case, we're working with fisheries, and, probably they want, I don't know, new regulations, or they want, or it's something also about how you say, to be the protagonists of the process, you know, to be able to show that they are doing something, and it's good to show to their own donors that
totally. Reputation. I think that's, oh my gosh, absolutely. It's huge. And what's interesting about this is that once you've boiled down that one of the reasons that they're not participating in this particular platform is because somehow that seems like it's improving their reputation to someone else that they want to show, like that they want to have a good reputation with. That means that you get to be super creative, right? Is there a way for you to find a way to signal to the people that they want to look good for, that they are good, that they're working with you? Is there a way to incorporate that into the platform? And so all of a sudden the platform becomes this really cool opportunity for them to actually accomplish what they're looking for, to look good to whoever it is. I love that. Nice job.
Yeah, actually the other something that it's happening in Paraguay is that in the other way they see an opportunity to participate in the process because they can have an influence in the decisions. So this is like the other way, you know, instead of getting away, they want to be in the process because it's the way that they can influence in the decision, and also because these dialogue platforms offer something different to other dialogue roundtables that are happening in Paraguay. And for example, in the case of Paraguay, they have other stakeholders. Like the public sector, that they are in this platform, that they are not participating in other process, another similar process. I'm correct, Cesar? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, going back to one of the things that you said originally around status, I mean, that's one of the other things, you know, status is something that we're all looking for. And so if there's a way for people's status to be elevated because these are this particular platform that they're a part of, then that's another interest that your particular platform can provide. Was there one more group, please?
I think there's actually two. So,
okay.
Yeah, Andrew.
Yeah, maybe I had Ronald in my group. Maybe it's better for Ronald to debrief.
Okay, great.
Sure,
Ronald.
thanks. So we had a very interesting conversation, and a few things came out. One of the things has been mentioned before about the fact that particularly some stakeholders particularly the concessionaires, are very keen about making profits. You know, their interest is on that, and not necessarily around the other discussions that relate to conservation and reduced deforestation or zero deforestation. So they generally are keen on that, and so therefore their interests will tend to reflect in that, you know, they're interested in finding out about RSPO and things that, you know, speak to their bottom line. The other point that we discussed and spoke about had to do with even similar organizations, even though we're maybe looking at conservation, have different approaches to achieving that goal. And so sometimes there's apparent competition, not just for financing, but also for visibility. And so, you know, you have different partners, you know, coming at the same stakeholders in different angles, and sometimes seemingly undercutting one another, and quite frankly creating some confusion and lack of coherence in the landscape of oil palm in the country. And you know, we sort of just spoke about the fact that particularly in oil palm, you're bringing lots of different people together who really have very different reasons for being there, and it's just a very complex space. So, you know, that in itself is just, you know, a melting pot, but not everything's dissolving. And I think that's what I'd want to speak about on what we discussed. Andrew, if I've left out things, please do add on that. Cheers.
Yeah, no, good job. Those are the headlines.
Great. Maximizing. We do have maximizing profits up here. Quickly. When I was in Peru and I was interviewing various different oil palm stakeholders, one of the other ones that seemed to come up significantly, especially with major companies, was risk management. So just another one that I think is important to remember for, especially with major corporations that often get painted into a very specific box. I found that even those particular stakeholders had a larger array of interest than just maximizing profit. Anyway, but I want to give opportunities for the last group to give us some of the interests that they had talked about and brainstormed.
Yeah, so let me check. Pascali, is your group gone? Your pair?
Yeah, I was with Gala and...
Okay, and Jairo?
I was with Gala and Jairo.
Okay, great. So I think we're done.
Oh, nice.
I guess, yeah, sorry, it was,
Okay,
it was
Sure.
I'll just be really quick. I think a lot of the points that were mentioned, we brought up. I think we also brought up the risk kind of focus that companies have. And one note for everyone, if you haven't checked out some of CDP's research, I think they've found that a lot of companies are motivated by reputational risk. So I think in the exercise that you brought up, recognizing that that's a big factor that brings a lot of large multinationals to the table is a good thing. And then I think, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we discussed that was in addition to that. I think it was covered by what other folks were said, but feel free to jump in, Alexandra, if there's anything else.
So there are a couple of more. So in a second, Lisa's going to talk to you about a specific tool, which will go into this a little bit more, but there are just a couple more ones that I wanted to highlight that again, this is based on my experience working and interviewing stakeholders within the oil palm industry in Peru. And this was on all sides. So one of the kind of the core interests that I was noting was this idea of meaningful contribution. People were they wanted to make a big difference in that particular sector. Cash flow is another one to really think about on all sides. And there's lots of really interesting ways that you can play around with options to satisfy people's various different needs around cash flow. And then the other one is this idea of fulfilling mission. Thinking about like, what is the mission of this particular organization or this particular company? And sometimes with companies that has to do with quality. Like, what do? I provide this particular quality service or this particular quality product. And so thinking about their interest in terms of, thinking about wanting to fulfill whatever that organizational, that company mission is again one of those big driving interest in people's, and the reason that people either come to the negotiation table or play hard to get or whatever it happens to be. Lise.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for your input. That was great. Could you stop sharing your screen, Elise, just so that I can share?
Yes.
So for those of you who've been in this community a while and have been working with platforms for a while, you'll remember that we had a 2015 Excel spreadsheet tool that a lot of you have used to help to map out your stakeholders and what their interests were and how you were going to engage with them, and that aligned with the guidance document that we provided you. So we've updated this tool, and I'm going to send it out to you all after this call. And so I just want to give you a glimpse of it. I'm not going to go through it because obviously we don't have time for that. And who wants to look at an Excel spreadsheet on a webinar? So it looks like this. It's not hugely different. And this is great. This is from Elise's work in Brew as well. Built off her great work there last year. So what we've added here is this column J, you'll see, where you can actually put in what their principal interest is. And so it's a drop-down box, and basically it's all the things that we identified. Maybe I'll just highlight here, like a love of something, connection to something, safety, etc. And there are many more here. So just as a way of encouraging you to be getting to that point of like, what really are their deep cares and concerns related to this work that we're up to. So we're going to send this updated tool along with guidance that talks about these principal interests out to you. And you can see on this tab that they're listed here, also listed here in Spanish, and we have this in a Spanish version as well. So we'll send out the Spanish version too. I
am just to note, there are likely lots of interests or versions of these interests. What I did is I put together a huge, massive list of them, and then I tried to really boil them down to the core 20, 30 interests that I felt like I kept hearing over and over again, although I definitely recognize that they sound different in different places and different contexts. But just one of the things, and this helps to tie in back with what Lise was saying in the very beginning, is the next time that you're walking into a conversation with a stakeholder who has been difficult, one of the purposes that you could give to yourself is like, I'm a good outcome of this particular conversation would be to have learned a new interest or to have learned something very new about this particular stakeholder, and using that as a way to think about and frame some of the conversations that you're having.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So we're nearly at time, but we really wanted just to do a quick go around, like in one word, what's one thing you're taking away from this 90 minutes that we spent together? And we'll, yeah, if you could share and then pass it, that would be great. And Jairo, will you start us off?
I have one question, not a question, it's just here, and see the underlying interest of the persons behind his church.
Thank you. Can you pass it to someone?
Oh, yes. Let's go with Alexandra.
Yeah, so I mean, the main thing that I take with me is like that interests like are not to be forgotten, and we need to think about them when we interact with people around us, but also like maybe at work with stakeholders. And I'll pass it to Ronald.
Thank you. I just was glad to hear that there are tools out there that can, that first of all, recognize that managing several different humans in one space is not easy as we would like to think. And that thought that it was interesting in that there are some tools to actually help in that regard, and focusing on the why is very important. I think I'm going to pass this down to, I think it's Philip. Yes, please.
Yeah, I concur. I think the word that I came up with is why. So just determining why the stakeholder that you're engaging with might be, what their motivations might be, and figure out if there might be some common ground, rather than just focusing on what they say, but figure out why they say it, and then kind of working backwards from there.
Awesome. Will you pass it to someone, Philip? You're on mute.
Oh, can I pass it to Pascal?
Which one?
Yourself. Sorry.
Okay, thanks. So like people have said before, yeah, for me it's remembering the underlying interests, the importance of remembering to check the underlying interests. Thanks.
And can you pass it, Pascal?
Okay, I'm passing it to Gradia.
I think Gradia has left us. She must have had another meeting to go to.
Yeah, we have a call right now, actually.
Yeah. So let's go back to one word. It's nice to hear everybody's thoughts, but if we have one word, we'll complete quicker.
Let's see if Gala is still around.
Mm-hmm.
No, he's not. Okay, Kathy.
Yeah. Yes, I'm here. Yeah,
Okay.
And I carrying with me is preparing during the negotiation process, and I'm taking interest in how we talk to the stakeholders, and it requires how well we are prepared. So that is what I'm taking with me.
Great. Great. Will you pass it, Gala?
Pass to Philip.
Philip went already. Choose someone else.
Okay. I pass it on to Catherine.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say what Philip said, just really understanding the why behind stakeholders showing up. And I will pass it to the other Pascal.
Yeah, my talking about interest, my plea to all of you is to never forget the hidden interest, those that are vested, private, that play a major role in distorting all the intentions and the positioning of stakeholder in our processes.
And can you pass it, Pascal?
Gosh, it's gone.
Pass it to Paraguay.
Yeah, I'll pass it to Sandra.
One word is open mind, like open mind to approach the different interests of the stakeholders. Pass it to Paraguay. Are they already?
They've left us.
Ronald. Okay, Ronald, did you write?
Ronald.
Ready. Thank you.
Ronald. So who is Miss Aline, Alexander, Andrew,
and Aline, I think.
Yeah, no one wants to pass it to me. What's my word? Importance. I just think for everything we do with platforms, and it's the purpose of the platforms, is to facilitate this type of conversation with the stakeholders. And if we are to try to get consensus, we have to understand what their interests are and what we can do to shape them or work with them. And so that's the whole purpose of these platforms, is to move away just from substance and get into the process of stakeholder consensus building, along with these tools from negotiation. So I think it's a very important area and technique for everyone involved in platforms, and hopefully there'll be lots of opportunities for you to drill down and keep building this capacity with everyone. Over to you, Aline.
Thank you. I think that my main takeaway is that, even if we can have common objectives, individual interests are different. And the importance to remind that and to remember that, and to do this exercise of trying to really understand all the stakeholders' interest, and to do that as a preliminary work in any partnership or platform, or I think that this is key. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone, and thank you, Elise, our guest presenter and speaker and expert. Thank you very much for joining us, and I see many of you in Peru. And for those of you that I don't, I hope to meet you soon. Have a good evening, afternoon, depending on what part of the world you're in.
Goodbye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.